What if the biggest villain in Beyond the Gates isn't hiding in the shadows anymore, but standing in plain sight, smiling, helping, performing innocence? Because that is exactly where this storyline is starting to get dangerous. And honestly, this may be the moment Beyond the Gates stops being just soap opera chaos and starts flirting with full psychological crime thriller. Because look at what just happened. What started as a seemingly casual gathering between Dani, Vanessa, and Tomas now feels like the birth of an investigation. At first glance, this looks like the usual soap formula: missing woman, shady allies, secrets unraveling. We've seen that before. But if you connect the beats carefully, this is not random drama. This is pattern exposure, and Hayley may be at the center of all of it. The gathering that changed everything. Let's start with what looked small but was actually huge. Dani, Vanessa, and Tomas sharing information should have been a routine exchange. Instead, it became a collision of timelines. And in thrillers, timelines don't lie. That's what makes Dani's contribution so explosive. Because Dani doesn't just bring opinion. She brings chronology. She remembers Hayley and Lynette interacting before the robbery. Read that again. Before the robbery, that one detail blows a hole straight through Hayley's entire story. Because if Hayley claimed her connection with Lynette began after the attack, but Dani places them together earlier, then Hayley didn't just omit information. She fabricated a narrative. That changes everything. Not maybe she's hiding something. No, it raises the darker possibility that the attack itself may have been connected to a relationship we were never supposed to question. And Tomas realizing this, brilliant. Because he isn't reacting emotionally, he's thinking structurally, he's building a case, and that matters a lot. Hayley's kindness suddenly looks terrifying. Now let's talk about the so-called generosity. This is where the writing gets really slippery, because every favor Hayley did for Lynette used to make her seem compassionate. Paying legal fees, getting charges dropped, helping with lodging, possibly financing the penthouse Vanessa is preparing. On paper, that sounds like rescue, but under scrutiny, it starts sounding like control. And there's a huge difference. This is where I think the show is doing something clever. It's asking, when does protection become possession? Because why would Hayley invest this much into Lynette? Why pour resources into someone unstable, threatening, unpredictable, and then suddenly sever ties overnight? That isn't normal fallout. That looks like crisis management. And this is where I think Dani's skepticism becomes more than emotional bias. She doesn't trust Hayley because she senses something transactional underneath the kindness. And I think she's right, because help in this storyline may have been leverage all along. And once Lynette became a liability, the help stopped. And maybe Lynette did too. That possibility is chilling. Lynette's disappearance is too convenient. This is the part no one should ignore. Lynette disappears. No trace. No warning. Then almost immediately, Hayley claims she was manipulated by Lynette. Really? That timing is almost too perfect. And in mystery storytelling, perfect timing usually screams orchestration. Coincidence has become suspicious, especially because Hayley's version conveniently paints her as victim. Again, notice the pattern? Every crisis somehow reinforces Hayley's innocence. That's not accidental writing. That's characterization. And Thomas sees it. That's why his obsession with the missing piece matters. He knows this is not about where Lynette went. It's about why every trail leads back to Hayley. And maybe Randy. Which brings me to the darkest theory in play. Randy may have crossed the line. Now we're no longer in soap territory. We're in criminal conspiracy territory. Because if Lynette kept threatening Hayley and Randy handled the problem, we may be looking at obstruction, or worse. And suddenly this isn't about betrayal. It's about whether a woman has been silenced, possibly violently. That escalates the stakes in a huge way. Because if Tomas discovers Lynette wasn't just hidden but harmed, everything transforms. Hayley stops being a manipulator. She becomes a potential criminal, and that changes how every past scene gets reinterpreted. Every smile, every lie, every act of concern, Everything gets darker in retrospect. That's elite soap writing when it works. Retroactive menace. You realize the villain was showing you who she was all along. You just read it wrong. And Tomas may be the most dangerous person to Hayley right now. Let me say something bold. Tomas is no longer reacting to drama. He is prosecuting logic. Huge difference. That detective he hired, that may be the move that collapses Hayley's whole world. Because private investigations in soaps usually exist to drop one of two things: a lead or a body. And I don't think that's accidental. The evidence Tomas is uncovering that Hayley and Lynette were collaborating changes the framework entirely. Because until now, Lynette could be dismissed as unstable. But if they were co-conspirators, then enemies, then one vanished, that sounds less like fallout and more like cover-up. And I love that Tomas isn't framed as impulsive. He's methodical. That makes him dangerous. Because villains survive emotion. They struggle against evidence. And Hayley may be running out of ways to manage evidence. Naomi investigating the food is a masterstroke. Can we talk about Naomi? Because this subplot might seem separate. It's not. It's pressure from another angle. And it's genius. While Tomas is attacking the past, Naomi is examining the present. That creates a pincer movement. And Hayley is trapped in the middle. Naomi secretly investigating the food Hayley brought. That is not random suspicion. That's instinct. And Naomi's instincts have been sharp before. What fascinates me is this possibility. What if the food isn't just a side mystery? What if it becomes corroboration of intent? Think about it. If Naomi proves something suspicious about the meal and Tomas exposes Lynette's disappearance, then separate suspicions become behavioral pattern. That is devastating because one incident can be explained away. A pattern can't. That's how people fall. Here's the twist I think many viewers are missing. Everyone keeps assuming Hayley is reacting to chaos. I think Hayley has been manufacturing chaos. That's different and huge. Because maybe Lynette wasn't the threat to Hayley. Maybe Lynette knew too much. And that flips everything. Suddenly the question isn't, did Hayley betray Lynette? It becomes, was Lynette always disposable? That is much darker. And honestly, much smarter. Because it reframes Hayley not as someone cornered, but as someone managing liabilities. Which fits everything. The money, the favors, the lies, the sudden break, the disappearance, even possible attacks on Naomi. It all tracks, and once a theory starts explaining every loose end, it stops sounding like theory. It starts sounding like design. But there's one thing that may feel almost too convenient. And I have to be fair, there is one potential weak spot. If Tomas suddenly returns with Lynette alive at exactly the moment Naomi is closing in and Hayley is unraveling, that borders on soap perfect timing. Maybe too perfect. And normally I'd call that contrived. But if Lynette's return isn't rescue but revelation, then it works. Because the point wouldn't be coincidence. It would be confrontation. And that's different. Imagine it. Hayley preparing to strike first against Naomi, thinking she still controls the board. Then Tomas walks in with Lynette, alive, damaged, talking. That's not melodrama. That's detonation. And if Lynette exposes not only the alliance but Randy's role, it's over. Hayley doesn't just lose morally. She collapses legally, and that would be earned. Because the clues were planted, why Hayley may strike first. But here's the part that worries me. Villains rarely wait to be exposed. They move first. And Hayley knows things are closing in. Naomi is probing. Tomas is digging. Dani is connecting dots. Vanessa is unknowingly holding financial threads. That is too much pressure. And pressure creates desperate choices. So yes, I absolutely think Hayley may go after Naomi first. Not necessarily physically. Maybe through manipulation, discrediting, framing, turning Bill. Using Randy, because if exposure is coming, the most logical move is preemptive damage. And that's what makes this suspenseful. Not whether Hayley is guilty, but how far she'll go to stay protected. That's a better question. Scarier too. Dani deserves more credit than viewers may give her. I have to say this. Dani may be the emotional truth teller of this arc. People often dismiss characters like Dani as reactive or intuitive, but intuition is often pattern recognition before proof exists. And that's what Dani has been doing. Seeing what others rationalize away, she clocked Hayley long before evidence showed up. That matters because sometimes the paranoid character is simply early. And I love that the show may be validating that. She isn't just suspicious. She may have been right from the beginning. That is satisfying storytelling. My bigger prediction, this is leading to a deeper conspiracy. And here's my twist prediction. I don't think Hayley and Lynette were merely partners in some isolated scheme. I think Lynette knows something bigger, something tied beyond Hayley, possibly involving Randy. Maybe even older secrets, because otherwise why invest so much in hiding her? Why risk so much? People don't cover up small secrets this aggressively. They cover up catastrophic ones. That's why I think Lynette's return, if it happens, is not just exposure. It's gateway to a larger reveal, and that could redefine the whole season. Why this story is suddenly working? Because it has moved from surface scandal to layered motive. That's the difference. It isn't just who lied. It's why was the lie necessary? That's smarter storytelling. And it trusts viewers to connect dots, which I appreciate because drama without logic burns fast. Drama with logic lingers. This lingers. My honest take? I think Hayley is being written not as a misunderstood anti-hero, but as a slow burn architect of damage. And I think the show is finally pulling back the curtain. Tomas is the investigator. Naomi is the silent threat. Dani is the intuition. Vanessa is the unwitting connector. And Lynette, if alive, is the ghost ready to speak. That structure is too deliberate to be accidental. And when a soap starts arranging characters like pieces in a crime board, something big is coming. Final thought, because maybe the real mystery isn't whether Hayley lied. Maybe it's this. How many disasters in this story began with Hayley, and we only noticed once Lynette disappeared? That's the kind of question that changes a villain forever. And if Tomas walks back through that door with Lynette alive, then this isn't just exposure, it's judgment. And once truth returns in person, even the best liar runs out of script.